Has this ever happened to you? Tank slapper, death wobble, whatever you want to call it, this can be a very scary and dangerous experience on a motorcycle. So in this video, I'm going to reveal why it happens, what you can do to help prevent it, and probably the most important part, what to do if it ever happens to you. But first, we need to make sure and understand what a death wobble actually is. A motorcycle death wobble, also known as a tank slapper, is a terrifying phenomenon where the front wheel of the motorcycle loses stability and starts to oscillate uncontrollably from side to side. This causes the handlebars to shake violently, making it extremely difficult for the rider to maintain control and often resulting in a crash. Right, so now that we know what it is, next we need to figure out why this happens. To help us, I've got 3 separate occasions where this has happened to me for 3 completely different reasons. On the first occasion, I was out cruising on the highway, probably doing around 70 miles per hour, I-25. All of a sudden, death wobble, tank slapper. My bike started going crazy, my handlebars all over the place. I could barely hang on to the thing, and luckily, I didn't crash. I was able to pull the bike over onto the shoulder and inspect it. Upon my inspection, I discovered that my tires were almost completely bald. Now, I do a ton of commuting on the highway, so a brand new pair of tires maybe lasts me a week or two. But seeing just how worn these tires were led me to believe this was a main reason for why the death wobble had occurred. And later on, when I made it home, I did some research and discovered that indeed, poor maintenance, such as incorrect tire pressure, worn tires, or faulty suspension, can all contribute to a death wobble. So make absolutely sure you have no mechanical issues at play, and that'll help you stay one step ahead. The second time I experienced the dreaded tank slapper, I was actually doing some motorcycle training out on a track. During this practice session, we were hitting higher speeds in excess over 75 miles per hour, especially in the straightaways. Coming out of a curve and into the straightaway, I started giving it some extra throttle to pick up speed, and suddenly I entered into that death wobble. Thankfully, I was able to reduce my speed, slow it down, and regain control, but I was unsure of why this happened. I later found out that higher speeds, especially over 75 miles per hour, can trigger a death wobble due to the aerodynamic forces acting on the motorcycle. Riding a motorcycle at these higher speeds is already risky enough without having that death wobble occur. The third time this happened, I started to think it was just me. This time, I wasn't on the highway, I wasn't on the track, I wasn't even going that fast. And to be honest, I was actually cruising down this little country road doing about 45 miles per hour. Unfortunately, the road I was cruising on wasn't that well maintained, and as I hit a bump, I suddenly went into this tank slapper. Now, while I wanted to blame this one on my motorcycle, this one was definitely on me. This experience helped me to discover that sudden movements, hitting a pothole, or accelerating too fast can also cause the front wheel to oscillate and put you into that death wobble. Okay, so we know what it is and why it happens, but how about something useful, Cory? Yes, you're right. Next, let's cover what you can do to help prevent this from ever happening in the first place. If you remember back to my first reason for having a death wobble, you'll remember how bald my tires were riding down the highway. This was a huge issue, and after that, I never wanted to let my tires get that worn down again. But worn tires aren't the only problem, so make sure you regularly check and maintain your motorcycle, including tire pressure and suspension settings. When's the last time you checked your suspension settings? Do you even know how to adjust it for your body size and weight? Along with making sure your machine's all ready to rock and roll, you also want to be mindful of your surroundings and the roads that you're riding on, especially if you're out on some country back roads and they aren't that well maintained. Make sure and avoid sudden movements and be cautious of road conditions. Anything from a pothole to a bump could put you into that tank slapper if you're not careful. But what if we're not on a crappy country back road and we're out on a perfectly maintained track and this still happens? Well, that's when you want to ensure your motorcycle is properly balanced and aligned. This is probably one of the big reasons that happened to me out on the track. Good, so there's definitely some things we can do to help prevent these death wobbles from ever happening at all. But that still doesn't seem like the most useful information to have here, does it? No, we need to go one further and find the cure. What if it does happen, for whatever reason? What do we do then to save it? Don't worry, because I've got the answer right here. But first, I want to confess something. In order to figure out how best to prevent these dreaded tank slappers from happening and how to fix them, I went out for a ride and purposefully tried to send my motorcycle into a death wobble at least a dozen times. I was gonna do it even longer, but I started to feel really sick. What I learned during this butt puckering experience was eye-opening, and I did it all for you. Don't say I never did anything for you. Correcting a death wobble not only requires quick thinking, but precise actions as well. So to help you remember, I came up with 6 steps to save a tank slapper. To help you keep this one stored in your brain so you can use it when it really matters, just remember this super easy to remember acronym. SIG. That's right, SIG. Don't worry, you'll see what I mean in a minute. Panicking can make the situation worse. So step number 1 is to try to remain as calm as possible. Now that we're nice and zen-like while we're about to die, we want to make sure and hold our handlebars firmly yet relaxed, and don't fight against the wobble. If you try to tense up and forcefully regain control of those handlebars, not only is it not going to happen, but it's probably going to cause you to crash even faster. So remember, step number 2 is to grip the handlebars firmly yet relaxed. Now that we've got a nice firm yet relaxed grip on our bars, we can gradually reduce our speed by rolling off the throttle. As you're doing this, just remember to avoid sudden deceleration. So step number 3 is to roll off the throttle. Now I know you're in a very intense situation and all your instincts might be screaming at you to grab that front brake and stop the bike. But I want you to tell that panicking voice to shut up. In fact, whatever you do, do not use the front brake, as this can worsen the death wobble. If it's absolutely necessary to use some sort of brakes, you can use the rear brake gently. So remember step number 4, avoid braking. That acronym's starting to make sense now, huh? So we're not panicking, we're holding our bars gently, we're rolling off the throttle, we're not touching that front brake. But what else can we do to help save this thing? Well, next, let's bring our body into play. Lean forward slightly to shift your weight towards the front of the bike. This can help to stabilize the front wheel of the motorcycle. Once we started to regain stability of that front wheel and reduce our speed, we can now look for an opportunity to move the bike over onto the shoulder, regain control, come to a stop, and check our pants. But not only do we want to check our pants, after the incident, make sure and check your motorcycle out as well. Inspect your motorcycle for any mechanical issues that might have caused the death wobble. Remember, these can be things like tire pressure, suspension settings, and even loose components. Make sure your bike is all good to go before you even think about getting back on it and continuing your ride. Worst case scenario, call Rider Rescue and get yourself a tow. Shout out. By following these steps, you can increase your chances of safely correcting a death wobble and preventing future occurrences. Experiencing a death wobble can be a heart-stopping moment, but understanding its causes and taking preventative measures can help keep you safe out on the road. But what if, even with all this knowledge on how to prevent and save death wobbles from occurring, you're not even sure if you want to ride a motorcycle anymore? Maybe it's not even worth it to you, the risks involved, the chance of death and dying and crashing. What does it all mean? Well, if learning to ride a motorcycle is something that you're passionate about, but you're just not sure if it's worth the risk, then watch this video next for 10 reasons why you shouldn't ride a motorcycle. That's right, Segura sick.